Welcome to another episode of the Peak Potential Success Show. My name is Fong. I'm an entrepreneur, business strategist, real estate investor, speaker, also best-selling author, and every single day I help others unlock the potential to guide them to succeed. Today on the show, we have another fascinating guest. On this show, we have celebrities, entrepreneurs, business CEOs, athletes, and artists to find out their path to success, how they're able to overcome challenges and adversity, and of course, their keys to success. And today's guest is somebody who's been helping people from all over the world enterprises, businesses, companies achieve more success and become more and more profitable, especially in the supply chain industry. He is the CEO and president of Atlas Network, a global end-to-end service supply chain enterprise, which is amazing. He's done so much great stuff for other companies out there, providing consulting, product management, faculty, facility selection, and also quality control, logistics, shipping and storage. He's also the CEO of Global Crosswalk, which is a company that helps streamlines project life cycles, especially in the supply chain industry. He is the host of Supply and Demand Show on YouTube, and also the best-selling author of the book Supply Chains Ups and Downs. A person of many, many talents, he's been involved in so many different industries, from real estate to spirits to banking to entertainment to sports equipment. You name it, he's touched it. So please welcome global entrepreneur, Mr. KERIM KFURI.
Thank you so much. I really, really appreciate it. And wow, what an introduction. That was a long one. And I do appreciate it. Thank you again.
Well, thanks for being here. It's always a joy to speak with somebody who's been involved with so many different things and also is successful in so many different things and industries. But before you got to where you are today, you have this journey, you have this story. And I'm sure a lot of people would like to go, how do I get involved with so much stuff and be successful at it? So what is your origin story?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. And I think the origin story that ties together so many entrepreneurs is really that of not having a straight path, right? And entrepreneurs really have to try many different things in order to really get at what it is in the end that they love, that they're good at, and that they're successful at. Because we know that as entrepreneurs, it's this mixture of talent and skill and timing, being at the right place at the right time. You could have an amazing idea, and the timing, the market, the reception to it could just not be there, and it never comes to life. And that's just literally a matter of timing. It wasn't that it wasn't a good product or a good idea or whatever. It's a matter of timing. So for me, I definitely had an interesting story. I've always been an entrepreneur since a young kid. I started, very young, selling blueberries and T-shirts in the mall, and
Oh,
really
wow.
kind of any opportunities to really kind of find a problem and come up with a solution for it. And if there was some commerce involved in the middle of it, like even better, right? I've always been a problem solver of sorts. And, through that, I really had, many different corporate experiences along the way. I worked in banking. I worked in the internet space for a while in the beginnings of really when dot-com boom was really happening. I started a dot-com early on in my career, and then kind of shifted gears and went into the world of finance, and specifically the regulatory side of finance. So I worked for the Securities and Exchange Commission in the Office of International Affairs. I worked at NASD FINRA, basically helping to regulate the self-regulatory organization of NASD FINRA. And it was through all of these experiences, right? Those creative experiences, those tech experiences, those banking experiences, and then those regulatory experiences that, and I've always been an international person, right? I grew up speaking three languages. My parents were immigrants, and I traveled many places in the world. Well, when I went and traveled to Asia, I had family that was there. I had some business that was there. This is where all of these different influences in my life came together. Because when I went there, I saw the beauty of how ideas become reality, right? Manufacturing and supply chain and just that entire mechanism. And I said, wow, this is an amazing industry, but it's riddled with fraud. There's not enough transparency. There's not enough visibility. There's not enough recourse when and if things go wrong. And the reality of it is that every production is going to have an issue or defects, and people need to be managed. Factories need to be managed, and people's expectations need to be managed. So that was the business. That was the idea. The idea was, how can we make a kind of end-to-end supply chain solutions company which protects customers and also safeguards the interests of the supplier side. And in doing so, have the best outcome, which is both economically and financially efficient for all sides. And that was the beginnings of the Atlas Network. But it took all of those experiences along the way, even back to that kid who was selling blueberries and t-shirts with that entrepreneurial spirit, and those tech experiences and those .com experiences and those financial experiences and regulatory experiences and international expertise and international citizenship, which is how I grew up, that all kind of came together to make this beautiful soup that was the business, that was the opportunity. And that's really what I think it is for most entrepreneurs. It's never really a straight line. It's this mixture of mentorship. It's a mixture of experiences that we've been exposed to, and how it comes together in a very unique way that hopefully solves a problem for the industry or for communities or people at large. And if you're successful at that because you have passion for it and it's true to who you are and what you've experienced and done, then you will be successful at that, even in the tough times. Entrepreneurs, you got to go home with your successes and failures every single day. You have to be your own cheerleader every day. And so because of that, you better love it. You absolutely better love it, because when it's tough, you got to love it. And when it's great, you also got to love it. And that's really kind of a little bit about my experience, my personal experience.
That is so, so true. I think I've heard people say that in entrepreneurship, if you're successful, that means you probably have 50 good days out of the year, and all the other ones are tough days.
Yeah, absolutely. And the reality of it is a good entrepreneur is the one who knows how to handle the tough days, better than knowing how to handle the good days,
Mhm.
right? I mean, I really think that that's where you really make your mark. And in my business specifically, where our company is served as almost like an insurance policy, dealing with the nightmare stories that small to mid or large size businesses deal with in their supply chains, either disruptions or major issues, quality, timeliness, whatever else it is. We are putting on our firemen's jackets every day and going out there and putting out fires. And some of the first conversations where we have in the requirements analysis when we talk with clients are, tell us about your nightmare stories.
Mhm.
Tell us about what's gone wrong, what you learned. The more you tell us, the more we can try to assist you to have a better pathway to do this in a better mechanism.
Mhm.
So, it's absolutely about the bad days in my business, and turning those into more good days than bad days. And that's really the business more than anything else, to shift the balance away from, we had all these problems and we had very little success. Now I've got a lot more success and less problems. Our business tries to shift that balance.
That is so, so true. I'm going to take you back for a moment here. You mentioned that you were a born entrepreneur, young age selling t-shirts and blueberries. Was your parents into entrepreneurship as well? So how,
Absolutely not.
if that's not the
Absolutely
case,
not.
how did you all of a sudden, you know what, I'm going to go sell blueberries to my friends at school or something like that?
Well, I think it comes from a few things. I think one, you kind of have it in you a little bit. You're a good communicator, you know how to negotiate, you figure out a way to be an extrovert more so than an introvert. And in these sort of these basic tenets of who you are, it starts to put you on a pathway of knowing how to connect with
Mhm.
people. And in the end, business, really, entrepreneurship, otherwise, is about connections, right? We're making this connection between, two parties, and they've got an issue and you've got a solution. But in the end, it's not enough. You have to be able to talk to each other. You have to be able to feel with each other and have empathy and understand, and then be able to then come up with solutions that solve those things that are not just the tangible, but also the intangible. So these are the things that I think are the basic tenets from which we come from. And then the other thing that I think is important is having people around you that could be influences or experiences that can influence you. So for me, it was not my parents. It was an uncle of mine who was very entrepreneurial and was very successful as an entrepreneur. But it wasn't so much the business stuff that he did that turned me into an entrepreneur or so on. It was more the having a limitless mentality, having a limitless mindset. He
Mhm.
was the type that basically said, hey, there's a mountain and you got to climb it. And when you get to the top of it, guess what? You're going to see other mountains.
Right.
And those other mountains are just within reach as to the one you just climbed. And they're even bigger and better and more majestic. So keep climbing, don't ever see a ceiling. You are the ceiling. The moment that you put reservations on yourself is when there's a ceiling. But other than that, there's a huge sky above you. This kind of a mentality, this like limitless possibility mentality, I think is extremely critical when it comes to entrepreneurship, especially on those bad days when you got to pivot and you got to change, you got to be nimble. If all you see is limitations, you'll never find solutions. You'll never have advancement. So I did have a person like that in my life at a young age who I think fostered some of this belief system. And, I try to explain that and promote that to my colleagues and friends and employees and even in my own kids to say, listen, you live this life once, you want to make your mark. Don't be limited by anything, especially not yourself. That's the number one that you don't want to be limited by. The number one person you don't want to be limited by is yourself. And that comes from within. So you have to have that sort of a mental shift and a change to understand that you are going to make differences that you care about, and it's going to be up to you to do so. So
That mental confidence that you develop is so important in entrepreneurship. It gets you past the hard days, it gets you past the naysayers, it gets you past the people who don't support you. For you to break out of that family mindset, like your immediate family mindset of not being business and all that kind of stuff, was that difficult? Like, as
yes,
much as your parents were like, okay, yeah, your uncle is successful, but that's him. You
right.
should stay in this lane because this is what we are comfortable with and what we're familiar with. Now, they're saying that because
Absolutely.
they love you. They're not telling you
Yes,
because they want to take
absolutely.
you away from success. So how did you navigate through that? And family and friends who do that too.
You got to be a stubborn son of a gun. Basically, is what it really. You have to come that confidence has to be enough to supersede other people's beliefs, and that is the definition of having the self
Mm.
confidence because you are going to bring it out from within you. So yeah, my father, great man, love him to death. Physician, helped people his whole life, and was very committed to, as an immigrant, came over and saw, an American dream and the way to do it, and work for a very large corporation, get a good education, and the business will take care of you because you'll take care of the business, and so on and so forth. And there was a break right there between us where I had been working in the corporate world, which, by the way, every entrepreneur, I think, is an extremely valuable experience to have to develop those corporate skill sets on someone else's dime, get paid to do so, and so forth, until the time that you feel like you can take the training wheels off of the bicycle and go. I find extremely valuable. So I don't look back on any of my corporate experiences with any kind of negativity, except for the fact that you can get a little too comfortable, or you can say, that you may not be ready to depart because it's just super easy to just go in and get paid and leave and go watch Netflix or whatever. That's not the life of an entrepreneur. I can't do that. I don't do that, especially in my world where it's international and working in Asia and America at the
Like
same time.
24/7.
Yeah, no, and that's the other thing. You have to set boundaries for yourself, especially in a business like mine, because you'll never see your family. You'll always be on airplanes. You'll never have a life. So you have to know what's important to you. That's another definition in an area of entrepreneurship that I think is very important to take care of the things that are most important to you and not just let work consume you. That can happen very easily in entrepreneurship. But yes, so my father and I had differences. He thought I should stick around, in the business I was in for a while in the finance space and just kind of keep doing that for many years. And, having a young child at the time, it was a difficult decision to then kind of say like, nope, we're done. It's entrepreneurship. That's it. I mean, there's even add more complexity to it. But, he couldn't be more proud of the things I do now, which is great. And you have to take a chance on yourself. That's the other thing. That's also self-confidence. You got to say, hey, look, if I'm going to take a chance, let me do it on myself more than anything else, right? So So, it wasn't easy. I had to definitely, take some leaps of faith that others may have been like, what's that going to be like? And then, and there's a lot of people that are fair weather friends. They want to be there when you cross the finish line, but they're not there for the journey. I
Right.
had some good friends around me that were there for the journey, and the ones that you'd kind of sit down and have coffee with and be like, oh man, everything's just a mess. And they're like, don't worry, it's going to be all right. You're going to work it out. You need to hear that as an
Right.
entrepreneur, you
Mhm.
know?
You kind of touched on it that some people in corporate they get comfortable. For you, what was that moment where you go, okay, I'm ready, I'm good to make the jump? Lots of people out there would go, you know what, I need to cut it all off, cold turkey, burn the bridges, so there's nothing to go back to. What was your strategy? Were you building something up? You got great success, got great case studies. I know I could be successful, or did you just cut everything out and go
No.
100%?
I was doing a parallel track. I was building while I was still working in the corporate world. So I was kind of doing they were non-competing interests. So it was acceptable to do that. And I would do it, in my free time or in the evenings or whatever else it was. But there definitely were kind of two catalyst moments for me. I won't name the company, but two catalyst moments for me where I was kind of like, yeah, I'm done. I was doing well on the other thing. The side work was starting to really pick up. The money was rivaling what I was making and so on. But there were two key things that happened.
Mhm.
The first one is more serious. The second one is kind of more funny. So the first one was I was basically selected into like a very exclusive kind of like management program. And I was in this management program and I was sitting there with all of these other, high profile people, including like the CFO and CEO and things of that nature. And all I was thinking for this, let's say, summit that I was invited to be for those 2 or 3 days I was there was like, I don't want to be these people. I did not want to be the people that I was supposed to be looking up to.
Mhm.
And that right then and there told me everything I needed to know. I am in the wrong place. I don't admire, I respect, but I don't want that pathway. So if I was standing in this top person's position, would I be like happy and excited and fulfilled? And my answer was no, I wouldn't be. So I knew that that was wrong. That was the more serious one. The more funny one was is I remember walking up and down the hallways one day and somebody kind of like was like, oh, you got to get into that conference room because it's XYZ person's birthday and they've got a birthday cake for this person and this, that, and the other. So you kind of like shuffle into this conference room and you see, 10 people that look just miserable, don't even want to be there, including the person whose birthday it is. And everyone's sitting around blowing out these candles and like, yay, let's have some cake. And then everyone goes back to their cubicle and does, puts their head down and kind of keeps on chugging along. And I was like, this is not my existence. This is not for me.
Mhm.
I'm not going to do that. So that's more of a lifestyle thing where I'm like, I'm just not going to be the guy that sits around on a random Tuesday eating, cake with colleagues that I kind of care about or don't, and then that's like the existence and happy that I had cake that day. Like it was weird, and I don't know. It's almost I don't know if you understand what I'm saying
I
here,
think
but
I think Seinfeld did a episode on that where
really,
somebody worked in this big company and almost every week there's a cake
oh
and
really?
everybody's miserable and the character was like, this is stupid, why am I doing this? So she stops going and then all of a sudden she goes, I'm missing my weekly sugar rush or something like that. So
Yeah. It's kind of like the equivalent of like the TPS reports in whatever that movie was, Office or the Office Space or something, I think. But it's this corporate sort of drone mentality that some people absolutely love and live for. And then for other people like me and entrepreneurs, it's literally like, being exposed to cyanide. You're kind of like, my God, like I literally feel like my life being like sucked out of me
mhm.
while I'm here. And if you have that feeling, you're in the wrong place. You're not achieving your potential. You're not really living. And we spend so much time working in our lives that you at least want it to be part of your life that you're living. And if
Mhm.
you don't feel like you're doing that, you're just throwing it all away for some, paycheck and so on and so forth. Not saying that that's not important, and it is important, but um, if you have some dreams and you don't go after them, you will always have the regrets, and the regrets will outweigh any paycheck you ever make. It just will. It'll make you miserable. You just won't be happy with things. So, you really got to give it a shot if you can.
Mhm. Very, very powerful stuff. You talked about the one of the main reasons why you formed Atlas Network is because you realize that in the industry of supply chains, there's lots of either not so legal processes, and then there's also some mistakes or some problems with how everything is run and all kind of stuff. Is there anything that you could share with us that most people don't realize is happening in supply chains that don't make it as profitable or not efficient?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think what people don't realize is the fact that the only consistency in supply chain is inconsistency. It means that every single aspect of the supply chain has the capability to totally destroy your business if you don't have it actively managed. So, what do I mean by that? I mean, first and foremost, tangible things, right? The same kind of people on the production line, the consistency of the materials, the technology being the same. Just saying, hey, we've done this 10 times, so the 11th time I'm sure is going to be fine. No, the 11th time is going to be, could be the one that you're undoing, because you have to look at every production as if it's the first one, right? Making sure you have scenarios where you can really kind of kick the tires regarding quality, third party attestation, so on and so forth. And then you then have all of the intangible things, such as wars, political changes, currency changes, environmental factors, force majeure, pandemics,
Mhm.
all of these things that basically can completely disrupt what you're doing or what you have been doing in the past, from a cost structure, from a time frame structure, from all of these elements. And so you really have to have a methodical oversight process when it comes to supply chains, your supply chain. And if you don't have the resources to do so, you have to hire or delegate that to a third party group like my company, the Atlas Network, or others, to do it for you, because it is without a doubt the most important component of your business to be able to have high quality productions that are delivered in time and have protections around them if and when there are some issues. So if you don't have those things in place, you really are just playing with fire.
Mhm.
And that's where, for example, and we're the first US based verified supplier of Alibaba. So we work with Alibaba a lot. Early on, Alibaba, when they were getting started, they had a great platform as a technology player, but they had a lot of bad actors on the platform. So groups that were posing as factories, but were trading companies. They were like middleman of middleman of middlemen. And in the end of the day, when and if things go wrong, they take no responsibility. They would take no recourse. And so, Alibaba since then has improved and built amazing verification programs and things to really protect the customer and the supplier side, both sides through the years. But early on, they were like, had a great platform and a great system, but you had a lot of bad actors on that platform. And so, and even to now, you still have bad actors not on that platform, but in the industry. And so, you have to have protections against that. And those are the things that a lot of people don't really think about or realize, especially if they're not from that industry.
Mhm. Now, you work with a lot of different companies, lots of different people and whatnot. What are some of the most common things that you recognize every time you go in to analyze a new company or a new business coming to you for help? Is there something very common that you see all the time that most people, you just make this change and it can
Yeah.
solve the problem?
Well, I'm not going to say make that change, but two misconceptions. The first one is that everything costs a lot less than it does.
Mhm.
And then the second thing is that everything happens a lot faster than it really does in reality. So these two things are things that I see with so many customers so many times over, where they're like, it really costs that much. And the answer is yes, if it's done properly. The problem is that so many groups are out there just trying to sell on low cost solutions. What benefit is it to you to have a $2 item with $5 of headaches, right? That it doesn't, there's no benefit. You buy something on the cheap and it will blow up your business, either from a safety standpoint or reputational standpoint, things that you can't come back from. And so, you have to be careful around when you're doing the factory selection process and the oversight and management process and the third-party attestation process to ensure that what you actually want to achieve is being achieved at a price that makes sense from what those products really should be costing, with reputable groups, and that you can then have a market to then sell in the open market from that point forward, right? So that's the first thing. And then the second thing is, as I said, is timing. Everybody just assumes, oh yeah, no, I'll pull the trigger. And when I pull the trigger, the rest of the world is going to say, great, thank you so much for doing business with me. And we'll get it done for you in a week. No, it doesn't work like that. The rest of the world is manufacturing, doing things. There's sometimes with certain productions and products, waiting times that could be 6 months. So you need to always make sure that you build in time for the business, time for productions, and then a lot of dummy time for when things happen. There's shortages of materials. There's long wait times at the ports to ship out. There's issues in the world at large, whatever else it is. So you really need to be nimble and adaptable in order to be able to function in the international markets. Very, very important.
You talked about international, global a lot throughout this period of time. How have you been able to navigate through different cultural procedures or cultural thought process or mindsets in order for you to help that company become more successful? Because sometimes they go, okay, yeah, that's Western society mindset. It doesn't work here. Well, you never know if you don't try, right? And then there's also different ways of like business proceedings and whatnot. How do you deal with those differences?
Well, I talk a lot about this in my book and in my writings and also in my kind of social media platforms about the most important thing in our world today is being a global citizen. And that starts with your mentality.
Mhm.
You have to have the world has never been smaller due to technology, right? It's brought us so close together, and we manufacture and produce goods on all different far reaches of the earth. So when you are doing work in the global economy and especially in supply chain space, you need to have an open mind. You have to have a understanding that there's a cultural exchange, that relationships actually matter in so many cultures, especially in Chinese, the concept of guanxi, and what that is. It's the relationship matters above all else. And start by sitting down and having tea first, and no one's talking business for a long period of time, and then you get to it, and so forth. So the point being is that you need to, if you're going to work in the international markets, understand there's a word there, international. And what does that mean? It means that it's not domestic. It means that it's not what you think goes all the time. You have to be able to give and take and push and pull and understand that that's the best way to get a great outcome. So that's something that I think, from a mentality standpoint, anybody who's doing work in international markets, global economies, supply chain, you have to be open-minded to cultures and differences, and also at the same time make your needs heard and expressed very clearly from the beginning. A lot of businesses and groups may try to yes you to death. Oh yes, yes, yes. They may not even know what you're talking about. They're just going to say yes to everything. And so it's very important that you have, transparency, you have clear identifiable markers of which you say, this is the quality we're looking for. Now reproduce it and show me that you can do it. And they do show it, and there's proof and there's evidence and so on and so forth. These are the things that really cut down the communication issues that may be there by looking at actual physical, tangible results and making sure that those results then meet to the goals of your and your expectations.
Mhm. Have you had to deal with translators and different languages, and how do you deal with that kind of stuff? Because sometimes how you express a message or something that you think is going to work or not going to work can be conveyed differently if translated into a different language.
Sure. So, I mean, first and foremost, I have my teams. I have 3 offices in China. All of my teams speak fluent English and fluent, Chinese and Cantonese and Mandarin, of course. And, they are able to understand the needs of both sides. And so it's very, very important to be able to have that. Obviously, there's also technology that helps, a lot of translators and things of that nature. But you have to have people that are aligned with what your focus and goal is as a company, and can also do the translation. It's not just you just pick some random translator that when you're talking about X, they're talking about Y. So it's not so much about linguistics, it's about alignment of focus and goals and linguistics. You need both of those things in place.
With the upcoming, as you mentioned before, tech is so important when it comes to running a successful company. What do you see in the next few years here, the impact of AI and tech? There's going to be people saying, oh, it's going to take away jobs. But then there's always other jobs that come out because of tech and AI. How do you see that impacting the supply chain industry?
Well, I write a lot about this too in my book, Supply Chain Ups and Downs. I also wrote 2 articles about it for USA Today. One was about the pros of AI, and the other one was about the cons of AI, right? So, pros of AI. I mean, obviously, being able to transition from being tool to teacher, meaning that we are going to be able to achieve results through some of this programming that would take us years upon years upon years to replicate with human capabilities. And so we can get to levels of advancement so much faster than we could in the past. And I think that that's going to be very, very critical, especially in supply chain. We're looking at all different kinds of scenarios around, greenhouse, footprints, carbon footprints, and trying to reduce, because supply chain and global transport represent the 8th leading cause of greenhouse gases. So we all are trying to figure that out. And so many aspects of AI are being focused upon that. I've even seen things like, for example, just like boxes. Let's talk about that, right sizing, making sure you have a box that looks at an item and creates the box in real time to be the perfect fit for that, to reduce excess waste. We all know about those Amazon packages you get, the box is this big, the items this small, there's airbags in it, whatever. That's a huge landfill issue, right? And that's the concept of right sizing and cubing, right? And that's happening with AI, and that's happening in supply chain on the packaging side, which is important. It obviously then reduces dunnage and reduces space, which then increases the amount of products you can ship per unit, which gives more efficiency, especially when fuel surcharges are going up through the roof. So that's important. And we continue to see those aspects of AI which are very beneficial, and the mixture of humans and computers working hand in hand, not losing jobs but creating new jobs, as you said. The cons are, which is very, very important, is one, where is the room for us to make mistakes anymore? Like some of our biggest breakthroughs in human history came through mistakes, including things like the discovery of penicillin, which was, medical breakthrough that saved millions and millions of lives, done by accident. Or where is the room for the creativity if all we want to do is kind of put it into Chat GPT and say, just write it for me? Where are you going to have those new creative or linguistic thinkers that are writing amazing pieces, or looking for that right word for a week until they find the right phrase or word? Will we lose that? Will we lose our creativity in exchange for convenience? This is a danger. I find that what are we losing? We talk about what we're gaining. What are we losing? And there's many things to think about. And then the other thing that I think that is a negative side on the AI side of it is, what are the protocols in place to ensure that it's safe and that it works effectively, not just for the United States or otherwise, but in all different parts of the world? Because the rules and regulations that work in, let's say, Saudi Arabia or in Africa or in the United States are different from each other. So you can't have a one size fits all to AI, especially if you're talking about things like, rules and laws to follow and how that impacts either cultural or religious differences. There's so many areas where these things need to be tackled. So you'll never have like a one size fits all when it comes to AI. And so it has to be like IP specific and geographically specific. Even in the United States, we have 50 states. Each state has its own basically government and rules and laws. The laws that are in New York are not the same as the laws in California. We know that. Very different. There might as well be different countries sometimes. So how does that play into AI as well, the negative side? So there's a lot to figure out here, and we cannot just rush blindly into convenience-based solutions without thinking about what we're losing, how we protect each other globally, not just within our own country and states, but globally. And how do we really kind of create a balance of technology meeting morality and meeting humanity? These are the things that I really think are very important.
Right. Very, very true. Now, as a person who is a global entrepreneur, you've, like we mentioned before, you've touched so many different industries, so many different products, so many different people, and all that kind of stuff. There's people out there that goes, you know what? I am passionate about one specific thing, like banking, or I'm very passionate about spirits. Would you say that, you know what, you need to be passionate about entrepreneurship? Because everything else is somewhat the same. You could plug this into this, you could plug this into it. This entrepreneurship is what is really the driving force of everything else.
It's absolutely the driving force, but you will always be most passionate about the things that you're a subject matter expert in. And that doesn't mean that you have to only be a subject matter expert in a particular area. That can change too. You can be a subject matter expert in this, and then the industry changes, and now you're a subject matter expert in that, and now you're in that, and so on. The driving force, the foundation is the entrepreneurial drive and spirit and curiosity and business acumen, of course. Um, is it always plug and play? Can you say, like, just because I'm a good entrepreneur, now I can do well in this industry, or I could do well in that industry, that industry? Not always. It may not always be the case. You could have limitations, either knowledge limitations or technical limitations, to being ultimately very successful in those areas. Um, Maybe you're a deep thinker, not a wide thinker. There's a difference there, master of many trades versus, like, a very deep practitioner. So, I don't know if it's enough to always say that it's, if you're a good entrepreneur, that you'll be good no matter what you do and you just kind of plug and play. I do think that you have to have an interest in the industries you're involved in. You have to have some subject matter expertise so you can be knowledgeable enough to then be good with the solutions and entrepreneur. I mean, you don't know what you don't know. But if you say, I'm shifting to this industry and I'm a good entrepreneur and I'm usually a good problem solver, but I don't know anything about this industry, how are you going to come up with solutions for problems you don't even know? So it's a bit of a balancing act, I think.
Mhm. You mentioned before that as an entrepreneur, it's 24/7, especially yourself in this industry. So how do you have that balance between family, fun, relaxation, work, profits, all that kind of stuff? How do you find that equilibrium for you?
Yeah, for me, it is very clear. Um, it's I do all these things for my family for sure. So, what good is it to live this life if you're, on planes, running, and just, killing yourself, if it's not to share it with, the people that you care about, to share it with? This for me at least is important. So, when I'm not traveling, it's dinner every night with the family at the table where everybody discusses their day and what's happening in their lives and what's going on, and being there in those important uh, circumstances, helping with homework and all these things, attending as many events as you can, the sporting events, the whatever it may be. And so for me, it works because, during the day, I'll be working with my clients, let's call it in the United States or Europe or otherwise. And then there's a gap where it's like kind of like a 5 to like a 7 or an 8 p.m. time frame where it's like dinner and family stuff. And it's very important. And then after then, it's like turning on with, like, let's say Asia, where I do a significant amount. I've got the office and I work with the folks. And everybody is a bit balancing act on that too. Like, sometimes my teams overseas will work in our daytime or in our nighttime. We sort of have to kind of ebb and flow a little bit, knowing that we're an international company. We have people in different time zones and places. But we try to be respectful to each other, to say, hey, I know that you're at home with your family at this time, just like I'm at home with my family at this time. So, you make a nice equilibrium. So family is key for me. I enjoy, playing some music. I like to play some sports. I try to find some time for that, especially on the weekends when I can, and seeing some friends as well. So you have to strike a balance. You have to strike a balance, because if you don't, and again, back to this whole thing about you being an entrepreneur and being a cheerleader, at the same time, you could be a horrible boss. And I mean to yourself, if you're an entrepreneur and you own that company, you could be the worst boss ever, and the number one that's at the end of that, tirade is you, So it is about striking a balance. I will say there are a lot of times and things that I would like to do where I have to consciously give up on them because I have to realize that I have responsibilities for my employees and their families and their people in my company. And that if I decide to do that thing with, that friend or see that movie or that show, something is getting missed a little bit. And, delegation can only happen so far. So there's definitely some moments where I have to give up on personal things that I would really love to do, like to do for the sake of the business, whether it's efficiency or operational insight or new business, profits, revenues, whatever you want to growth. There definitely is balancing acts there.
So to have your family, kids understand that, do you bring them into what you're doing?
I do. I at least expose them in the way of conversation. I don't really have them kind of, work in that space with me yet. But absolutely, if I have a new product that we're working on or a new client that I'm doing something with, I'll say, hey, I've got this new group I'm working with and this, or I'll put them in a situation. I'll say, listen, if you had this and this and this and that and whatever, how would you deal with this?
Mhm.
The first answer is always like, Dad, why are you always so annoying? Why are you always asking us questions? And I say, because you've got a brain in that head, right? You should use it. So let's talk about a few things that are, maybe interesting and things you could learn from. So I try to paint some scenarios or pictures for them so they can understand
Mhm.
just entrepreneurship or international business or cultural exchanges or any of these things that are important regardless what you do.
Mhm. Very, very cool. I mean, one thing I did notice, you didn't mention sleep in any of that answer, which means you don't.
I get enough when I need to for sure. And I was a big fan of Benjamin Franklin. Benjamin Franklin had something which was called the precept of order, which basically he created where he said there's 24 hours in the day and you need 8 hours for work. You need 8 hours for kind of rest and refreshment. And then you need 8 hours for sleeping. And that was his mechanism. And he's like, if you live that kind of a way and you're diligent about it, you will lead a full life. And I always think about that and I say, wow, I'm really not living Ben Franklin's, precept of order. Some days where I'm sleeping 3 hours or 2 hours. But, luckily we've built processes, we've built fail safes, we've delegated responsibilities. So it's not like the early days when I was first getting started where I really didn't sleep much.
Right.
I get my time when I need it, which is good. But yeah, I mean, there's definitely some times where it's like midnight or 1 in the morning and we're having some heated conversation with a factory or our team about some kind of an issue. And I'm just like, all I want to do is just go to bed right now. But
Well,
it is what it is.
in your career, you've made another transition, and that is into public speaking and book writing and helping and consulting. What
Yes.
was what got you to thinking to do that? Because most people go, I want to focus on consulting. Why am I going up on stage as a speaker? Why am I writing a book? So what got you to do it?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it was about misinformation around this industry.
Mm.
So, I've always sort of been in the shadows. My company never we really looked to kind of be in the limelight. As a matter of fact, we never even advertised for probably the first 15 plus years of our 20-year existence. We
Wow.
just were like, okay, word of mouth, industry, we do a great job. People talk about us, and that's pretty much how we've always grown, which has been great, even to now. A business just comes in. We get an email. Hey, I heard you did an amazing job for these group. Can you help us with this? And it just like that. That's how this industry is because there's that many problems. So people need help. But during the pandemic, supply chain became common vernacular and people were hearing about it because products were skyrocketing. Availability was not there. There were things that were missing on shelves and nobody understood why that was. And I thought it was important for people to start to really understand this. And because we've always had a holistic approach since day one to the way we run this company in all aspects of the supply chain, I said, hey, I've got very little hair on my head that I've lost along the way through trench warfare in the supply chain space and otherwise. So maybe people want to know about this. And so many supply chain related conferences and so on. So I started speaking on more stages. As I told you, we became the first US based verified supplier of Alibaba. So I was doing a lot of those kinds of events and opportunities. More and more podcasts, then started our podcast, which is the Supply and Demand Show. And after doing this and kind of having more of a public facing, presence, I said, you know what? It's time to write this book. And this book has got to be 150 pages or less. And it's right there. It's like 147 pages. It's got to be really easy to read. It should be focused on students, entrepreneurs, business people in general that just need to know more about supply chain, and even supply chain professionals who only have a very siloed view. They just sort of see their space, transport, procurement, like they don't see holistically the whole space. And that was the idea of this book, to be a bit generalist, to sort of, have it in a very relatable voice, which is what I tried to do. And then have some other really interesting topics towards the tail end, like AI and nearshoring and sustainability, which are things that we need to just continue to stay on top of. And that was the book, Supply Chain Ups and Downs. It's called that, Ups and Downs, because it's exactly the industry. Get ready for a bumpy ride. You're going to have the ups, the downs. You're going to have to know how to navigate all of it. And there's a lot to look at that you may know, and there's a lot to look at that you may not even understand what's happening, and you may not even have control over it. So how do you deal in an industry where those variables come at you? Well, I wrote a book that kind of talks about that.
That is totally awesome. Okay, final formal question for you, and that is your greatest life lesson. Either it's a big failure or something that did not turn out the way you wanted. What was the biggest life lesson that you had, either in life or business? Well, you're flipping through all those files in your brain right now.
Well, I mean, I just want to give one that basically I think is just very applicable in just entrepreneurship and in life in general. And that is, believe in yourself. That's it. You got to believe, you got to have a belief in yourself. And there's going to be so many times that you are going to be put in that fire, and things are going to go bad or wrong, and you don't know which way's up or down anymore, and it's real complicated. And it's in those times that you really have to believe in yourself. You Self-confidence, I think, is the most important aspect of us as human beings, especially in just like life and in business and in relationships and in all of these things, because it's through self-confidence that you can achieve greatness. You can be supportive to others, supportive to yourself. It's really the fundamental of everything. And I've seen it to the negative side, where when people don't have self-confidence, what happens, and how bad things can really get because of the fact that they didn't believe in themselves. They didn't have self-confidence. They relinquished control or otherwise, and they lost opportunities or years of their lives or whatever it may be, or their health or whatever you want to call it. So self-confidence and believing in yourself, I think, is absolutely the biggest life lesson that I could give to anybody.
Awesome stuff. Great words to live by. I got a few rapid fire questions. Give me the first thing that comes to mind. All right. You're stranded on a deserted island, one food to eat for the rest of your life. No consequence. What would that be?
God, one food the rest of your life.
You'll still be in shape. You'll still be ripped. All that great stuff. You're healthy. What's that one food?
I'd probably say like shrimp fra diavolo.
Very specific. Hollywood calls and goes, "Hey Kareem, we love your story. You're so inspirational. Who would you cast to play you?"
Who would I cast to play me? Uh, Bradley Cooper.
Bradley Cooper shows up at your door and goes, "Hey buddy, I got casted. Let's hang out. Let me get to know you a little bit more." What does that night out with Bradley Cooper look like?
Well, I think we're going to probably do some good drinking for sure, and then get to a place where we can have like a comfortable conversation, and then there'll probably be something where we sit in like a cigar lounge or something of that nature, and have like more like introspective thought about why I do the things I do and how it gets done.
Okay, so now he's hungry. And he goes, "Ah, come on back to my house. I'll fix you something nice, my specialty, my go-to dish." What's that special dish you can cook up for him?
That I can cook up for him.
Yeah.
I would probably cook him some really good stir fry.
Mm, nice. You're on a road trip, hours on end, one song to listen to without getting tired of or annoyed with.
Oh my God. That's hard. One song to play without getting tired or okay. Uh Carolina by James Taylor.
Nice choice. Last question. Before that, give me a number from 1 to 5.
3.
1, 2, 3. So the word is dolphin.
Got
So if
it.
you had to use the word dolphin as a metaphor for success, how is success like a dolphin?
How to be successful like a dolphin?
Or how is success like a dolphin?
Okay. So success is like a dolphin because through the ups and downs motion that the dolphin takes within the body of water, it generates forward momentum. And that's exactly how our lives are, right? So we're going to continuously undulate the way a dolphin undulates. And by doing so, we continue to go forward. So even though we go down, it's with a purpose. And when we go up, it's with a purpose. And the purpose is a consistent forward momentum. So that's how I think that's how that would go for me.
Nicely done. So that's how success is like a dolphin. Thank you very much for your time, your tips, your stories. I learned a lot, and I'm sure a lot of our listeners did too. Any final words from you? How to get your book? How do people contact you?
Sure. So the company is The Atlas Network. So THE, theatlasnetwork.com. For my sort of philosophy and leadership, my website is KERIMKFURI.com, or I have, a very active LinkedIn page, YouTube page, Facebook, Instagram, all that stuff. And for the book is at supplychainupsanddowns.com. So supplychainupsanddowns.com or on Amazon with supply chain ups and downs. Those are basically the key places for me.
Awesome. Well, once again, thank you very much. Everybody else, make sure you connect with Kareem and also get a copy of his book. As you can tell, this person is highly, highly successful in what he does, and he has a lot of great knowledge. And I'm sure he'll share a lot of that either through his content, his book, all that great stuff. So once again, thank you very much. He's Kareem. My name is Fong. Until next time, today is the day to unlock your peak potential. We'll see you later.